Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to Comedian MTG. My name is Ian. On this very special episode, I am not alone in the driver's seat as I have a wonderful special guest. Our second time recording this because my recording setup was suboptimal last time. Please welcome the lovely Gold Sabertooth.
What's going on? So nice. We had to do it twice. But I'm happy to do that. Actually, when I was low-key kind of excited, Ian's like, do you want to record it, run it back? I was like, let's do it, man. We get to chop it up. We had a lot of fun. There was a lot of good laughing in the last one.
Yeah.
That was just fun. So hopefully we can recreate some of the magic this time.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not like, oh yeah, here we are again.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode. We're here to talk about your top 4 list from the Top Deck Titans, and also a list that you've just kind of dived in head first with, which is your Nadu Winged Wisdom list, brand new from Modern Horizons 3.
Yeah. It's so funny to watch this full arc because, little inside baseball behind the curtain. Like weeks ago, I'd messaged Ian and I was like, there's something about this card. I'm brewing it. And I think people would like to hear about it. And it was still under the radar. and now we're like presenting this video to you, which is cool. It's cool to see. It's fun to be part of a vibrant Magic community. Yeah. Just like there's a great narrative to cards. A card comes out. People think it's cope. Some people champion it and we're like, I don't know, it seems kind of fun. Maybe there's something here. They brew, they realize a card has some really broken and kind of lovely strategies. And that's what brought us here today. So,
and the cool part is, like with this deck, I think there's a lot of innovation that you'll see between pilots too, as well, right? It does, while there's certain aspects of it that are kind of like similar between a lot of lists. We can pull up comparisons in a little bit between like the other lists that did well that first weekend of release, and we can talk about a bit of those. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting innovation with this commander, with this deck. People like yourself, Jorman, I believe Baneslayer played it. We had somebody playing it in Las Vegas that weekend. A lot of cool stuff with this commander. I definitely think we'll go over some of the intricacies of it. But let's talk about the card at first. I feel like that's probably pretty important to breaking it down. So we got a brand new Modern Horizons 3 legend here. It's Nadu Winged Wisdom. This is a flying 3/4 bird wizard for 1 and Simic. This creature you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it into the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Ability triggers only twice each turn. Now, I think a lot of people are going to read that ability first off, right? And immediately they go like, oh, it's like Thrasios, right? Which is so funny because it's so distinctly not Thrasios in a few ways, right? So like 1, otherwise put it into your hand, right? And distinctly does not say the word draw, right? So like Bowmasters, things like that do not trigger off of this ability, which is pretty sweet.
It is.
The other thing is, you'll also notice says you may, if it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. There's distinctly a lack of word that we are very used to seeing there, which is the lack of the word tapped, I think, is like so important for this deck. I think it would be pretty good without that part, right? But the fact that it comes in untapped is like kind of crazy.
I agree. Yeah. But, there is a historical precedent, and this set is full of callbacks. The grandfather, the predecessor of this design space was Coiling Oracle, which was, when I started playing Modern, like a modern playable card, like a value card. It was like a proto Ice Fang Quaddle where it was a 2-mana 1/1 that when ETB'd, you reveal the top card. If it was a land, it went into the play untapped, or it went into your hand. And I think that Wizards, they heard a lot of the disgruntled fan. It's funny, like some of these cards have these amazing abilities to be exploited by triggering abilities multiple times. And they're like, okay, we're going to do once per turn. And then the fans once per turn. Come on, Wizards. And they're like, okay, twice. Okay. Twice per turn. Another like twice per turn. This thing's busted.
I think it's the fact that like you read it and instinctively at first you're like, oh yeah, the Nadu triggers twice per turn. It's like no. Each creature on the board of Nadu triggers twice per turn, and that's the part that makes it actually crazy, right? Like it's any new creature that comes in, any creature you add to the battlefield, any creature X, Y, and Z, right? If you flicker Nadu, it's completely reset, and you have a whole new 2 activations to go through. Now, obviously, I think people instinctively go like, okay, well, like there's only a finite amount of ways you can target stuff, right? But that's where we run into some of the broken stuff. And you're playing the most of these effects, I think, that I've seen, which is 0 mana equippers. And I love that you're on all three, realistically. I think like these are the broken parts of the deck. I think we're famously seeing Shuko shoot up to $15 for this uncommon from Betrayers.
Oh, baby, dude. I got a whole fat grip of Shukos from my cephalid breakfast days. And I was telling you, I was like, when I saw, I was like, when I saw this card printed, I was like, oh, I gotta find my Shukos. I found like my old like box of like, like nomads on core and like all these weird cards.
Right. Hell yeah. All right. So like, let's talk about these. So we got Umbral Mantle is the one I feel like is the one I don't see played as much, but Lightning Greaves definitely is. Lightning Greaves, casual commander all-star for a really long time. A card I've been pushing more in cEDH in certain specific brews, right? Either whether you need haste in your commander or, you don't want it to die to Bowmasters, turns out relevant line of text, right? And then, so we have Shuko. Shuko is the one that's also good, and people talk about it a lot. One, obviously, it's the cheapest, right? And then two, it's Urza Saga fetchable, right? Which is like very real lines of text in that card,
Because what you're saying about Shuko, this became one of the best reasons to play Urza Saga in CD. But more than that, like, and we'll talk about this later, it gave us one of our, not our first, but a new and relevant lands deck in cEDH, which had not existed. We had like Kodama Sakashima. There's some other ones and some fringe, like Lord Windgrace decks. I'm not putting them down, but they're, let's be honest, like there's some good pilots do some cool work, but those are not like part of the metagame.
Not recognized tier list. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're not tier list. Yeah. This has the ability to become a tier list, EDH top 16, top commander on Simic lands. And I think that's just so cool. It's cool to find a new way to play the game. Because Ian, you and I have something in common where like we like to play at the highest level, but we also like to showcase our creativity and have fun brewing. And it's hard sometimes when you just like start building a deck and the deck starts building itself because you're like, okay, I can't not play Lotho, or okay, I can't not play Metaball. Like there's like just good cards that are just like our format like really only has like sometimes 10 or 15 spaces for innovation. This deck plays, if you compare this a side by side to Kinnan, which is another commander centric powerful Simic deck, you're gonna find 40 cards different. And that's cool. Like that's super cool.
Yeah. This deck's definitely a lot more like lean, low to the ground, playing a lot of quirky but like effective pieces, right? Whereas Kinnan's definitely a lot more of the like big over the top nonsense creatures, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And one thing, it's funny, we were talking about, as I mentioned last time, I shared an allegory of like somebody posting this like the first week that this card was released, and they posted a picture of Shuko and they were like, hey, I just had to force some negation to Shuko, ask me anything. Right. And it's like, so like these effects to if that allegory doesn't tell you enough, these are the most important effects in this deck, right? The ability to just
100%.
These basically become storm cards, right? Like they're the Krark's Thumb of a Krark deck, or like more like the Tavern Scoundrel, or like that kind of card. If you look at cards like
harmonic
right.
When you're at these are the cards that when they're put on the stack, the whole table, like you got two friends all of a sudden. We're playing against because it's all hands on deck. It's like, okay, what do we do about this? Like, and just spoiler, I don't care about giving up percentage points in a tournament. Target the Shuko, kill the Shuko, force of vigor the Shuko, force of vigor the Greaves, Haymire White the Greaves, like destroy the equipment. Because
I think the deck plays a much more fair grind plan when those are offline. For sure.
And then it's not like sitting in the water, but it's not like storming off.
Right.
It's like it's the same thing. If you a Krark deck. It's a lot like Krark Sakashima in that it is a non-deterministic manual storm deck in two colors. Two good colors. Simic and Izzet are good color combinations. They're powerful color combinations. You're not in Selesnya or Orzhov. Like you have some tools at your disposal, and you can find ways to win, but you're not competing on the level of Cisse or Magda or Blue Farm or Rogsai when you've managed to neutralize the enablers. So that's what I would say. if you want
So like you're saying basically without some of your broken pieces, the deck's much more of just like a fair and fair. Yeah. Right.
That's it.
But
yeah.
when you get the enablers, then that's where the broken stuff comes in. That's where you're going to get those percentage points.
And that's something we talk about, Ian.
Yeah.
We were talking about last time about choke points. Like,
that's
the choke point. That's the all hands on deck moment.
Yeah.
That's like, you're like untap, upkeep. Okay, silence. And then that's like that moment. That's like, okay, we're all in. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Those are the moments for this deck. It's like, that's like when Kinnan puts Basalt Monolith on the stack. That's what this is.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So so we see definitely once again talk about these enablers. They're the things to look out for. Now let's talk about the Umbral Mantle because as I said, I think you're one of a few people who's playing Umbral Mantle. I think it's just solid to have that redundancy, right? So like why? Yeah. Is that just you want that redundancy?
Playing it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a difference between Moxfield goldfishing, theory crafting, and playing. And I think that like when you play Magic, like shit goes sideways. We were talking about before, like the card I always want to cut when I'm brewing is like Noxious Revival, Eternal Witness.
Oh yeah,
we need this card. I put another counterspell in, or I should put another tutor in. Right. And then you're in the game, and you're like, oh man, they fucking like force and figured my Basalt Monolith. I wish I could get it back. So I do think that like just having redundancy is important because it turns the game. Like, let's say I'm a Nadu player, and they rightly so target my enabler with Nadu on the stack or something. You know, Nadu's on the stack, they blow up the Shuko. That happens. You know, and I think that's better than like countering Nadu because like Kinnan, he's easy to recast. He's only 3 mana. 5 mana for a Nadu would still be fair.
Absolutely.
So what you realize is that like sometimes you just like playing against Kinnan. Sometimes they just top deck the Basalt. Yeah. And this gives you another chance to top deck our Basalt, one of them. And we know like 3 mana in a Simic value deck with lots of dorks that go 1/3 is not that hard.
No, not at all. Yeah.
You get to play all 3 of the mages, which I think are very good right now. I think that I'm really high on Imperial Recruiter right now. I'm almost like I almost want to play a Goblin Matron right now just to get Dockside in my red decks because I do think that when you put a Worldly's Tutor on the stack in, there's so many cards light up in your opponent's hands that can interact.
Oh yeah.
But when you put like Trinket Mage on the stack, there's not many. There's some things, but far fewer cards are relevant. And I am on the Flare of Denial just as like a free protection spell. I know it might get cut. I'm just brewing it. I'm trying it out. But there was a game where I was playing where I like tutored up the Shuko, and then I went to cast the Shuko, and I was able to sack my Trinket Mage and Flare of Denial it. And it felt, I mean, that's not Magic Christmas Land. That's just Magic. You know,
a pretty reasonable scenario.
Scenario. Yeah. You're not going to try to sack Nadu, but you can sack other stuff. And even in a storm turn, it's not unreasonable to sack Nadu. It really isn't because he's very easy to recast.
Yeah. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish, depending on what the clones clone. Yeah.
I would definitely sack a Spellseeker to this. And Unctus is one of the examples of cards I would say the true enablers in this deck are the 3 0-equipped artifacts. The next tier of cards, which are, I would think of them more of like Necro or Naws or even, Necro and Naws aren't the win con, but they are just they really give you a way to just like ransom your life total or ransom your resources to really pull ahead. Unctus is that for this deck. For those who don't know, it's 2 life for Phyrexian and blue. Until on a turn, target creature becomes a blue artifact in addition to other types. It only can do it during your turn. I think it's only at sorcery speed, maybe. And so basically what you can do is you can just put Unctus activations, turning everything blue twice. And generally that you can't go infinite with that. Your life is a pretty severe bottleneck. So it's 2 life per activation, but what you're hoping to do is, and I'm sure Ian, is just use this to get you to the finisher or get you to a Shuko, and then you can wipe your brow at 6 life and then finish it. The other card that does that is Sylvan Safekeeper. And there's some really spicy Sylvan Safekeeper stuff you can do where I talked to the judge and they said you can it will give it Shroud, but you could stack the activations with one activation in the stack, target it, and then target it again. And you can sack tap lands to bring untapped lands into play. So you could do some weird ritualing. For example, in my finals game, I seemingly was throwing out a desperation pact when I didn't have mana to pay for it. But realistically, I had 4 looks at 1 untapped land, which was pretty good in a deck with, I think I'm playing 32 or 33 lands.
Right. So basically,
find a land
So basically, what happened was you used your mana to pay for it, and then proceeded to start safekeepering your lands away so that they were triggering Nadu.
Yep, and until I saw I had 2 or 3 creatures out, so I would have had enough targets for my lands, and I just had to hit 1 land, my top 4 cards, and I was pretty confident. I mean, it was either that or losing, and I think I would take that as a
You took an educated gamble, right? And that's sometimes cEDH is all about that stuff, right? And you did mention that right away, which is definitely something really interesting to note. Is this is it's a 32 land cEDH deck, which is even Winota's below that nowadays, right? So that's kind of wild to see, right?
And Ian, I'd like to be on 34 if I could, because there are turns, and I know if you watch the Play to Win video where Cam is playing this, there's a turn where he's trying to get to that land, and it's sometimes you'll see a lot of cards before you see a land. That's just variance. It's a R&D game, so part of the game.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of these highlight lands, right? So some of them that stick out to me. I mean, obviously one of the biggest ones is definitely Dryad Arbor, right? Because traditionally underappreciated cEDH land, but in this deck specifically, a fetchable Shuko target is it's pretty good to me.
To turn a Misty into 2 Nadu activations is insane. And I definitely would be caught dead playing Dryad Arbor before Nadu, but now it's okay, you ping my Dryad Arbor, cool. I'm gonna Coiling Oracle. It kind of gives it a Shaper Sanctuary. And as you're somebody who I know loves creature-based win cons and creature-based strategies. A format is in a good place when the threats and the answers are at parity. And I think right now, threats were suffering, creature-based threats were suffering because they're good on the stack, but there's lots of things that can punish them. So I like having a reason to play green again and to play dorks without fear.
Other highlight lands, right? I think Field of the Dead is a big one for you, right? Do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So one thing we have in the deck we were talking about, which are the 0 mana targeters. So in my version, I'm not playing any of the spells that are primarily for targeting my creatures. I kind of leaned into the recursive effects at 0, or the ones the desperation effects like Unkist or Sylvan Safekeeper. Right.
So you've cut the Seeking's Blessing and all of that.
I cut Sylvan Paradise. Shout out to my LGS. I actually found one in the bulk box, and for karma, I gave it to the LGS owner because it was $70.
Yeah.
But
that much.
But the features, like you talked about with the Dryad Arbor, having 2 more Shuko activations, the creatures or Nadu activations become the other choke point. You can only storm off. The ways to storm off are to either reset Nadu, which means bouncing him and replaying him, flickering him, of which there are only 2 good ways, I feel, reasonable ways in blue: Essence Flux and Displace Your Kitten. And the other way is to create more creatures for targeting your equipment, 0 equipped equipment, with landfall triggers. And for that, I have 3. One is a land and one is Field of the Dead. I think, again, I also love Field of the Dead. I love being in a world where we can play Field of the Dead in cEDH. I think Field of the Dead is a cool card.
I agree.
I've loved Field of the Dead I don't know, since it came out. I think this card's really cool. I'm sad when it got banned. Love playing it. I think it's just, I have always thought that land and Landfall is a very under explored attack point in cEDH. And I know we talked about this last time, Ian, but some of the Japanese decks have been playing like some weird land stuff. And I'm like, man, I wish more people in the States or where I play would. And so I've started doing that. And in fact, the cool part about this deck when it came out, this deck, maybe the reason why my deck's a little different is it's kind of built out of the shell of a cEDH AC deck I built with Nate from Play to Win. We built a cEDH AC deck together, called Gyarados' Baja Blast. And and it was like we were exploring some landfall stuff. And then when Nadu came out, we're like, let's just make this a Nadu deck. And that's really how it started. So and part of that was this Field of the Dead package.
And we'll pull up the other sort of high performing Nadu lists a little bit later in the episode, so you can kind of see a little bit of a difference between like where this sort of like landfall strategy comes in versus like you know what traditional or the other Nadus are kind of looking like right now too. But I think Field of the Dead.
Are they on it?
Field of the Dead in Baneslayers, and let's see about Jormans. Jorman was not. That does not
27 lands.
Yeah, Jorman. that is definitely a very Jorman move for sure.
Yeah.
Which funny. Are you on Scoot Swarm?
Oh, I'm on Scoot Swarm, and in fact, I'm not to like toot my own horn, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I was one of the early adopters. I mean, I built this deck as soon as it got spoiled. I think I was one of the early adopters of the landfall stuff. So Scoot Swarm and Springheart and Nantuko. And in fact, I was like talking to Wounded and like explaining the bestow part of Springheart and how it can use its bestow ability. So on the stack, it'll become an enchantment. It will target, so you'll get a Nadu activation. But then it has an ability of once a land comes into play, not only can you make a bug, but you can pay 2 and make a token copy of the creature it's bestowed upon. In this case, this is not only a landfall enabler, it's one of the Nadu resetters, the clones or blink effects or bounce effects. It's extremely powerful. And in which case,
so in that situation, what do? Do you bestow onto Nadu, get a Nadu trigger, and then you allow the token to live as opposed to the original Nadu and put the regular one in the command zone?
Yeah, you can do that. You have to do that because then you're resetting Nadu. And you can wait to do that, Ian. You know what I mean? Whenever you're ready. Like, you know what I mean? Like you run out of activations, you got 2 lands up and you're like, I'm running out of gas. You know what I mean? That land comes in, you pay 2, reset Nadu, and then you have 8 more activations. And
what's nice is even if it is bestowed, right? You still make the bug if you choose not to make a clone, right? Which is an important part of like subtlety in the text of that card.
Totally. It's almost like when you're reading another card we'll talk about, which is important to the deck, is the Nissa card. Is that like it has a special ability, but the ability triggers every time. Like I think one thing that was ignored about Springheart and Nantuko was that at its basement, it's a 2-mana 1/1 that makes a 1/1 creature with every landfall. That is by far the best rate we've ever had in that. We've come a long way from like rampaging Baloths or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we've got, or Avenger of Zendikar. Like this is a crazy efficient rate. A 2-mana 1/1 that makes a creature with every landfall. That's big game. I don't know.
It's been a while since we've had a bestow creature in the common zeitgeist. So for those who don't know in the audience, when you bestow a creature, it basically becomes an aura enchanting a creature. And one important part about bestow versus a regular aura is that, so say, for example, in the example we illustrated where you let the enchanted Nadu die, right? Normally an aura, just a plain old aura, would just go to the graveyard, right? When a creature dies, auras fall off. But bestow specifically, because they are in their very nature creatures, you can bestow onto something, and then when that creature dies, so for example, the Nadu clone at this point dies, the creature just hits the battlefield. So Nantuko would just be like, okay, now I'm just a normal, non-enchanting Nantuko.
Right. It's different than mutating. They kind of like fall off, they say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's super cool. It's something that the last time it's funny, the last time we saw it was like in Journey to Nyx or something. I don't know. Maybe it was
they might have done like a guest appearance in like another Horizon set at one point, but like very, very rare. It's
a rare thing, but it's super cool. And notably, it is a non-creature spell in the stack. And there was a game like in our finals match where I think Baneslayer had the win wrapped up. Player 1, Baneslayer was on Nadu going second. Player 1 was on Tivit, and they had just gone for a Thoracle Consult and been blown out. after a hard fought. So all the interaction was mostly gone. But instead of casting the Nantuko just to make the 1/1s, he went for a Bestow, even though I think he had a way to activate Nadu multiple times.
Right.
And in doing so, it was able to, the one piece of interaction left was like a force of neg or something that maybe the Tivit player couldn't play on their turn, but now was alive and they could just exile it on the stack. So that's something to be thinking of. If you're worried that your opponents, I mean, it's a high risk, high reward thing. It's much easier to get your 1/1 elf monk in play. Creature, insect monk, it's much harder to cast an aura in this format where it can be Swan Song hits enchantments. Yeah, it can be Swan Song,
Yeah, cast your creatures, kids.
Cast your creatures. Yeah, just don't get too greedy. Just cast your creatures.
Absolutely. Sweet. So yeah, Springheart's like a lot of the thing to talk about for this deck for sure. And then Scoot Swarm is literally just like that, just like Field of the Dead. Like comes in, you get a 1/1. And then if you hit this point of 6 or more lands, then it gets real crazy at 6, right? Because then it starts making copies of Scoot Swarm. And then they like, they don't technically like go infinite, but you start making
it was exponential.
Yeah. You start making very ridiculous amounts of numbers to the point where it's like pretty trivial if you have a Shuko out and then you hit like 8 or 9 lands on Scoot Swarm, you're basically drawing your entire deck.
Of course. And you will. I mean, once you've had a critical landmass, like it's it is akin to playing against Quark Sakashima with Quark, and Sakashima has a copy of Quark, and they have Veyron or whatever, Voice of Duality, and a Harmonic Prodigy, and the Tavern Scoundrel. Like, sure, that Git probe is never that Git probe.
It's like you're not technically dead, but we know what's happening. So speaking of that notion, you're not technically dead, but you're really dead. How do you actually win with this deck? Because so far it's been a lot of fiddly nonsense, right?
Fiddly, and I think that's the big slight on this deck, and the big diss is that they just dirtle I think that people are working it out. The deck is only it's just come out. The lines are going to be a lot cleaner, and I think people, when they see it, they're going to scoop. When they can show, if you haven't gone to combat yet, one way in this deck to make infinite mana, a lot of it goes around infinite mana or infinite activations, but there's some pretty tight ways to win. One of them involves a Shaya and Quirion Ranger with a Lotus Cobra effect. So you have a Shaya, the 5 mana elemental, and you have a Quirion Ranger. You can they're all forest. You can infinitely bounce them and replay them. And then if you have either Tireless Provisioner, Lotus Cobra, or Nissa, you will generate infinite mana upon each. But also, the untapping Ian is targeting a creature. You can target with these untaps. It's triggering Nadu. So you're getting Nadu triggers. It goes nuts. So with that, you can just wallop them with the huge finale. You could cast Walking Ballista. If someone has ring protection and you make a 9, you could make a 9 million ballista and blast them. And their upkeep. Those are the big ways. The other way to generate infinite mana was one that you showed me last time we were chatting, and I really liked Cleaner, which is just the Snap Ewit Cradle and any other blue land.
Easy. So basically, as long as you have, I think it's 4 creatures, so I'm not mistaken, because it's one green.
This deck makes a gajillion creatures. So
yeah, exactly. So if you have 1 green, you have a Gaia's Cradle, and you have Snap, and they have 1 land that makes blue. You basically get to snap, untap the blue land, untap the Gaia's Cradle, put the Eternal Witness back in your hand, play the Ewit, pick back up the snap, over and over and over again. And guess what? Those are also Nadu triggers every single time you go through the loop. So free as heck.
So cool. Yeah. So it really is a value piece and a combo piece in the command zone. I like playing. I'm a patient combo by nature, patient creature-based combo player. I love Yawgmoth and 60 card a lot. I like Tayam. I love Tayam. People hate Tayam. I love Tayam. But I like to play proactively, and I think that Nadu has a similar play pattern. So I'd say if you like in 60 card playing like a Devoted Druid combo or Heliod combo, you might like this deck. It's similar it's about finding your window. It's and it has a really resilient point of attack, which is landfall and creature based. I mean, you could play a cEDH deck with 30 creatures and 32 lands. Like if that's something for you, then this is a deck I would recommend. And I think playing the deck is a way for you to, if you're not going to be if you think you're going to run into a lot of Nadu and you don't like it, it's good to pick it up anyway to figure out how to beat it.
True.
It's not. I really don't think this is as good as by nature. I think that I could be wrong, but I think there's the ceiling for 2 color commanders that are not partnered is much lower, just because there's a tremendous benefit to having two cards in hand. You have 2 extra cards in hand if you have a partner, and also more colors. It's just you have more access to more spells. Like if you're not playing, like, this deck's really fun and it's synergistic and it has a unique play style, right? But you're also like not allowing yourself to play arguably the most powerful cards in the format, like
Breach
Dockside and Breach. Like Dockside and Breach are like that's playing with power, like that's it right there. So that's what I would say. I think that it's like highly synergistic. It's the flavor of the week. People are into it. I fell in love with this deck. I'm happy to see the hipster in me is dead. I would normally be mad that when people start liking a deck I love, but it's more love. I've been able to talk to tons of fans about this deck every day and share cool artwork about Nadu with my fans and my patrons, and I love it. So awesome. I'm all about it. So the other card that's and it's just cool. You can look at the list. I'm kind of opting to play. Do I think Haywire Might's better than Force of Vigor in a vacuum? No. But do I think that Haywire Might can hold a Shuko? Yes. Do I think that I'd be better off running like a rapid hybridization effect? Sure. Probably. But does Gilded Drake and Volatile Drake allow me to
take someone's creature?
Take some creature and put a Shuko on it? You bet. So I found myself reaching for a lot of creature-based interaction.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying. I'm also trying 6. I have not yet cast it, but I'm excited about what it presents in terms of, like, again, a card that when you're goldfishing, on Mox Wheel when you're supposed to be at work. Yeah. And I hope my department chair is not watching this, but when sorry, Greg. It's one of these cards that were like when you're goldfishing it's kind of a dead card in your hand. But in the game, I've seen other people play it in other decks. Plays really well, and it could buy back a Shuko. It could buy back an Umbral Mantle or Grieve.
Yeah.
Or a way to tutor them up, like one of the mages, one of the Trinket, Tribute, and Trophy.
Right, which is really cool. And the only downside I see with 6 in the deck is like the awkwardness of like Nadu just puts the lands in, so it's not like you're ever going to get fodder for 6, right? Like
you're totally right. Yeah. I agree. I've thought about that too, like successful ways to put lands in hand, because in a way, like, there's so many like times in a game where you want to Bestow at hand or you want War in hand, and there's an awkwardness of like having your. Yeah, it's like, oh, the land comes into play untapped. But if that land's Bestow and you're trying to stop Underworld Breach, you're cooked. You're cooked. So I don't know what the answer to that is. One card I really like in Rogthras in my testing was Expedition Map. The tutored to hand.
I was literally thinking about that. Yeah.
And the other thing, I guess that's one thing I didn't like about Archdruid's Charm is that like it was instant speed, but the land came into play. I wish it gave you an option to land in your hand, because there are some times where it's just like you've got mana, but you need the Bestow.
Yeah, it's so funny when you see this thing that's like 90% of the time the strict upside of this card, and it's like except for this one moment where it's like I actually want to land in my hand this time.
It's the it's actually the Thrasios problem too.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many times you activate Thrasios and you see the Otawara and you're like, I want this in my hand right now. I don't want this tapped on the battlefield. So.
Yeah, I've seen so many like Thrasios decks locked under a rule of law, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just go get Bestow." Oh wait,
you can't. So that's tricky.
I've also seen so you definitely, since the last time we talked about this deck, which obviously our audience is not privy to, you have cut a few cards. You want to talk about some of the recent changes to it?
Yeah. Some of the things I've cut, we can go to the Boneyard. They should all be here.
Yeah.
Let's see. I brought some. You can see I brought some tutors back.
Yeah.
Legolas's Quick Reflexes, cool card,
Yeah.
that card. I'm not playing the Epheto Alchemist and stuff like that, so I'm not on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I added Nita form. I took out Tezzeret. I like Tezzeret. But I opted for Transmute because I can get it off of Spellseeker. There was a couple of times where I was like, if I could have just Spellseekered for like one of my artifacts, I could have just won.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's pretty much it. I think this is a very good Spellseeker deck, and this is a time when a couple months ago we were saying Spellseeker is dead. I cut Offer for the Flare. I think just trying it out. I think Offer, Flare hits anything. Offer hits lots of things. And somehow I was actually thinking about it. I was like, would I rather have a Tribute Mage on the battlefield, or would I rather have my opponent have 2 treasures? And like, and thinking about that, I'm like, I'm just trying out.
Absolutely.
I cut Titania.
It was one of your big spice cards for the tournament.
This is my big spice card. Okay, as a novelist, kill your darlings. I love Titania. It's a sweet card. It could come back. It was there were some interesting combos with Sylvan Safekeeper, Titania. While you have the Quirion loops, you can keep casting her. She will bring the lands back to the battlefield. And then you can back in them Safekeeper. You can have infinite 5/3s and then Finale. But at that point, like, I already have my land. I can make infinite bodies with a land. I can make and I can make infinite mana with like the snap. When the snap has more utility, it can protect Nadu, reset Nadu. It can lift. It can bounce somebody's Oppo, so I can tutor. So
like it can do the classic like bounce the Drannith, so I can play Nadu and still have the mana to do it, kind of thing, right?
Sure. So, in a Cradle deck, snap is a ritual. So
absolutely.
I was okay to cut. Although I do really love this card, and if I want to like power down the deck and play with friends, I'm always going to reach for Titania. It's a card I'm going to keep trying to put it in decks. It's a big stinky card I love. So.
And so here we see the Sea King's Blessing, as I mentioned kind of earlier, and Sylvan Paradise. For those who are familiar, there's a lot of Nadu pilots playing these. Basically, one or more targets become blue, right? But the whole point is it's a 1 minute instant that can target all your creatures at least once. So if you're lacking a Shuko or an Umbral or a Lightning Greaves, right? This is a temporary like draw 6, right? So like it's kind of the TLDR on that one. And that's same Sylvan Paradise, literally just color shifted version of these effects.
No, you're right, Ian, and I think that they're a good example of cards that could like have a place in certain decks, and they could. And if you're thinking about the deck and you don't see it in my deck, but you want to try it, please try it. There's so much room for innovation in this format, and with the Sea Kings and the Sylvan Paradise, I think they're good examples of kind of like Unctus cards and Sylvan Safekeeper, where they're not the payoff, but they're like a card to a payoff, maybe. So
for sure,
trying like they're an example of a card that like maybe they play better. Maybe like my Shuko gets destroyed or my Shuko Force of Negged, and then I have to find a way to rebuild. And I'm sure like, I got all my creatures out, and if I could get that burst, and especially what's unique about the Sea Kings and the Sylvan Paradise that Unctus and the equipment don't do is you can get a burst of Nadu triggers during your opponent's turn. That's big.
Instant is huge. I also think it's important to know that they're also like the spell doesn't have to resolve, right? Like the whole point of it is like you don't care if it resolves and turns all your creatures blue. You don't care if it resolves and turns all your creatures green. The big point of it is like, oh hey, let's get 6 triggers, Nadu triggers. Doesn't matter. Misstep, dispel it, do whatever you want to it. Don't care.
6 free Coiling Oracles. I mean, 6 uncounterable Coiling Oracles for 1 mana. Pretty big. Pretty awesome. And if you have life, another card technically, which kind of like can stretch some activations is Spellskite, because you can with Spellskite you can like target something and then put a Spellskite trigger on the stack, and you can like put like another Spellskite trigger on the deck, I believe. So
yes. So although I think the second one doesn't.
But it will target twice, though, won't it?
But Spellskite has to resolve though, and then at that point it's already targeting Spellskite, you know. But basically the point is like
I'm just saying with activations and stuff, you can use Spellskite to get like an extra activation out of things.
Yes, exactly. So say you're snapping your Eternal Witness or whatever, and you're like, actually, I want to get a second activation here. Let me redirect to Spellskite. The spell then changes targets, and you're like, oh, hey, well, now Spellskite's been targeted. I get an activation there.
Two things will be targeted.
Exactly. Even though one doesn't end up actually resolving, which is kind of nice. So one thing we haven't talked about yet, which I know is like one of the biggest, spiciest pieces of this deck, is your Nissa. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
It's so good in this version.
If Titania had to go, Nissa's got to stay. Nissa is a card I really love. Nissa, for those who don't know, Nissa Resurgent Animist was one of those cards that might slip through the cracks because it was from a weirdo set.
Yeah.
It also gave us like Ob Nixilis and some other cool cards. It's 2 mana. Oh, and the cool Narset. It's 2 mana and a green, which is a casting cost I love. And if you'll notice, a lot of my 3 mana creatures in this deck, with the exception of Eternal Witness and like Unctus, are 2 colorless and 1 colored pip, which is really, really nice casting cost. There's a big difference between Ranger Cap and like Abolisher are not; those are not free casting costs. They have some real stress on your fetching, and it's hard to do. But the 2 and the 1 is so easy. It's a crypt in the land. It's like a ancient tomb and a petal. So. Lovely casting cost, great body, 3/3. It's an Elf Scout. And it has a Lotus Cobra effect, a landfall effect. And what I mean by Lotus Cobra is whenever a land enters the battlefield, you can make a mana of any color.
Yep.
But it does it every time. But notably on the second time, you will reveal cards from the top of your library, not tutoring. So this is not shut down by Tranith. This is not shut down by Grafdigger's Cage,
I don't think it's shut down by like any stacks.
Anything. It's a unique effect where you just reveal from the top of your library until you reveal an elf or an elemental, and then you put it into hand. But when you're storming off with Nadu, Nadu's one of the few decks I think that can like trigger her reliably during your opponent's turns. Even it's easy to put lands into play, put fetches into play. You're going to put 2 lands into play. And she'll trigger. And what you're looking for is, I mean, there's some whiffs. You could hit an Elvish Spirit Guide or one of our 3 dorks, I think. But the big hits are Quirion Ranger and Ashaya.
Yeah, which is just literally a 2-card combo.
Right. And when when you've got the kitten in play, when you've got a Displacer kitten out, when you flicker her, she will reset. And as you're storming off, you will be able to assemble this combo. And it's nice because if you're storming off with Nadu, you'll assemble it sooner or later. But but this way you don't have to cast any spells to get them, which is nice. You don't have to cast any spells. You don't have to cast Neoform, Cord, Eldritch. Nissa is like a combo assembler, especially when you could flicker her with like Kitten, or the
Essence Flux,
or the Essence Flux. She'll get what she's looking for. It's pretty awesome. Kind of love the card. But you could just
the Lotus Cobra's side is like just perfect for what the deck's doing anyways, right?
Yeah. So and in fact, I should say that's a big reason why I cut another card a lot of people are playing, which is Hullbreaker Horror. Everyone's like, this is a great Hullbreaker Horror deck. And it probably is, but again, if you're porting this deck over from Kinnan, you'll probably still have a Hullbreaker Horror. But if you're building this deck from scratch, you might not, because what I've found is that like you don't often have a glut of mana hanging around. You're usually kind of threading the needle around activations, getting to the point where you have 1 land and you have no activations left, but you have a Finhorn Elf in your hand and you tap it and you put a Finhorn Elf out, you get 2 more activations, and then one of those activations is a Misty, and then you crack your Misty and you get a Dryad, then you get 2 more activations. You're kind of always like just stretch very thin on mana and kind of just like like hopping across the bog stone by stone, So I think that the Lotus Cobra effects really take the pressure off of that.
And especially as soon as you get like redundancy with them, right? Because if you start hitting like Lotus and Nissa, you're just like, now every single land that comes in is just free money.
You're right. And especially the Tireless Provisioner.
Right.
Treasures. This card's nuts. So this card should see more CEDH play. After playing with Tireless Provisioner, I was like, this card should see more CEDH play.
It's one of those cards that I'm always like, we all recognize that this is a very broken effect, but it's specifically awkward enough in a bunch of decks that it doesn't see play.
I know. It's very powerful. Again, it takes unique deck building philosophy to want to play it. But when you can play this and take advantage of it, it's extremely powerful for uncommon. You know, it's absolutely. Like it's way more powerful than like Tireless Tracker. It's way better. Like in fact, there was a game where I was going off and I forgot that I could have made food and I could have just I had mana and everything. I didn't have I was using Unctus as my resource. I could have just cracked and used the food to get more Unctus activations. And that's something that should not be overlooked. Is she also makes food. So if you have like a ton of mana, you can gain life. Like that was the same game where like I was being like punished. I was kind of under the tyranny of my own One Ring. I should have just been making food. I honestly didn't even think about it. And now
that's awesome.
It was after the game, someone was like, "Why didn't you just make food?" And I was like, "Why didn't I make food? I don't know."
Like it does another thing. Yeah.
So that's I forgot.
Yeah. It reminds me of this game I was playing on Kenrith where I was like trying to breach off under Italian. And at the end of the game, they were like, yeah, dude, you could have just gained 5 life at any point. And I was like, I don't want to hear it.
Life Italian. Yeah, I'm with Kenrith. I know there's certain cards we just get tunnel visioned and we forget.
Right.
Like,
yeah, flexibility. Hey.
Life gain doesn't come up much.
So funny. So there's a couple cards I want to pick your brain about.
Talk to me.
So one of them that came to mind first off is Cloud of Fairies. To me, it feels like such a auto include in this deck. What's the reason for not having it here?
Once you're done playing Cloud of Fairies, some of the Rog Thrask guys, they're really high on like Earthcraft, Cloud of Fairy stuff. And
I was going to say Earthcraft is also another one I was going to ask about.
The only reason I'm not running Earthcraft is the big reason I'm not running Earthcraft is because I am not. I just think that putting more enchantments on the stack is just something I'm not interested in doing right now, and I really want to lean into the landfall stuff.
Sure.
Cloud of Fairies is an excellent card, but I think in my Magic brain I have it in a Earthcraft package.
Sure.
And maybe that's not the right way to think about it. So I think there is room to brew. I think Cloud of Fairies is definitely a card. I love Cloud of Fairies.
Yeah. Specifically, like the interaction with like Displacer, Nadu, Cloud of Fairies is like it feels kind of like a game-winning combo right there. You know?
Yeah. But to be fair, like it's Kitten gets broken with like everything, for sure. Man. Kitten is so good. Kitten is like okay. When we were talking earlier about choke points, like this is the card. Like all hands on deck. Kitten is an all hands on deck card.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's like the universal language for Displacer Kitten, right? Like with Tavesh, with Tivit, with like any of these cards, if your deck's playing a Displacer Kitten, it's probably not in a way that's ever fair.
Counter the Kitten. Don't let them tell you it's a value Kitten, dude. The Kitten is like, it's too much of a problem, especially because even if they're trying to be like, I swear I have no non-creature spells, I'm just putting the Kitten out. If someone clones the Kitten, y'all are effed. Dude, you're effed, man. The kitten is lethal. It's such a good card. So you're probably right, Ian. And I really liked your suggestion of bringing Snap back with Ewit. I like, and Cloud of Fairies kind of falls into that same like package of cards where it's like Cloud of Fairies, Ewit, Guy's Cradle, you know. And I do like those cards. Earthcraft. In my earlier version of the deck, it had Earthcraft in it for sure.
Yeah. It's just like a one-time Guy's Cradle reset. That's like a huge
that's
kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Especially because I did say like mana is, believe it or not, with untapped lands, mana is still the choke point because you really are trying to manually storm and chain off. Like you do not like it. Like you don't want to fizzle. Like just for good manners. The table's gonna be so mad at you because you probably had some Mystic player and like you want to keep your friends. So. You're gonna win. Just put them out of their misery. Just win. Make it clean. Don't try to do crazy endurance cephalid Coliseum loops. Sorry, Wounded. Sorry, Cam. No, dude. Don't be a good friend and neighbor. Don't do that. Just ballista them into the Shadow Realm. Just cast the biggest finale in the world.
And then the last card I was thinking about is Manglehorn. I'm surprised that one.
I love Manglehorn. Yeah, Manglehorn's probably in there. Maybe I should. You know what? Maybe I should cut. The Hairwire Might for Manglehorn. I love Manglehorn. I think I had Manglehorn in an early version. Maybe I cut it for 6.
It feels like that was the spot that stuck out to me. Is like, if you find 6 isn't working, I feel like that's a really easy, like 2 and a green for a 2 and a green.
I totally agree. Ian, I totally agree. I love Manglehorn.
The other 2 I want to talk to you about were these guys, which you see in a couple other of the versions, which is the Bristly Bill and Enchantment Equipment version of that.
Roaring Earth.
Yeah.
Why not? Because I know some people are hot on them, but my version is not like a value. Mine's not a value.
Value Nadu.
Yeah. Mine is like Nadu pivot. Like, it's just going to like wait for its moment and win. I think you should reach for Bristly Bill if you want to just kind of play the game where you are playing a mid-range Nadu deck where each landfall targets. By the time I'm getting landfall triggers in my deck, Ian, I hope to be having a free or semi-free clipper or targeter. So So
it's like the difference between, and I think this is what you see with like a lot of the Nadu builds, because this is, when you look at like someone like Wounded Satellites version of Nadu, right?
Yeah.
It's he's like so high on the Bristly Bills and like the Roaring Earths and stuff like that. And I think it literally is like, whether you're playing it like Krark Sakashima Nadu or whether you're playing it like Thrasios Nadu, right? And like, they're 2 very different camps of the deck, which is so cool that this deck has 2 different camps in it, right? Like, I think that's awesome that can even exist within this one parameter of this one deck.
I totally agree. Mine is like the Krark Sakashima version.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is like, it's,
and then goes.
Which is so sick in Simic, right? Like, that is just something like not the colors for this. And like, we love that.
Dude, we love it. I mean, it's a wide tent for Nadu right now, new deck. And I'm excited to see what new versions come out.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm really excited actually to see what other people start doing with it. I'd like to see.
Yeah. The phrasing of the ability is so interesting, because like, there's so many different ways you can win with the deck too, right? You mentioned like, this deck is like not a Hullbreaker deck, right? But there are versions of this deck that are explicitly a Hullbreaker horror deck, right? And then like, there's going to be versions that can do like ghostly flicker loops and like
with
maybe
Mystic
even
Sanctuary. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Right. And so there's so many like really cool, intricate ways to mess around with the deck like this. And I think it's just like a really cool expression of what is possible in cEDH. I really hope this deck sticks around for a while. I'm not going to be surprised if there definitely is some rumbling where people are like, yeah, but it's really bad for the casual audience, which I hope like doesn't affect it, because I think this is a really cool commander, and I hope it sticks around for a while.
I hope so too.
It's awesome. I think, even in, you can, anyone who really cares to, obviously the link for this deck will be down in the description below.
Thanks.
You can even go through and look at Tim's change logs and like see just like the fine tuning, the adjusting. And it's so awesome to see with like a new brew and a deck that's like still so fresh, right? Within 2 weeks, I feel like you fundamentally changed how you approach it in multiple aspects, right? So it's like, It's awesome, man. I love this shit.
I love you, man. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been so fun. And,
absolutely.
And the conversation doesn't stop here. Hit me up and talk about the deck. But more importantly, I know he's going to plug it himself, but hit up Ian. Like, if you want to up your game, like, you will not become I would be shocked if most cEDH players have as much time devoted to thinking about this format we love as Ian. Ian is a professional. So when people are shocked that like Ian is like, assembling the Infinity Gauntlet of Time Twisters, like, don't be surprised. He puts himself in a position to win. Like, Ian thinks about the game all the time, and he travels across the country. Like, there are some, but very few people that are like a journeyman for the game the way Ian is. He's a consummate professional. He's one of the best minds in the game. MLC1 winner, real winner too. Great. One of the best minds in the game. So if you want to level up your game, hit him up for coaching. I know he does it. He's committed himself to this full time. My dad had a really great expression about like the Greek sailors, the Greek soldiers would burn their ships on shore to ensure that they would not turn back. It's kind of like it's a way of like committing, like committing to like the combo turn. Like Ian has committed to a cEDH and he's gonna make a living doing it. And so if you have an opportunity to support him, help Ian and it'll help you. The same way I did it with my art. I've committed to my art now, and it's the best decision I've ever made. Happiest I've ever been.
Well, that was one of the nicest plugs I've ever received. Thank you, my man.
Sure. So.
Yeah, and if I can flip that on you, man. For those who don't know, Tim has some of the most unique art in the cEDH space. It is like, I mean, you've become like analogous with cEDH, to be honest, at this point, where
That's
people
awesome.
like know your art is everywhere. It is psychedelic. It is raw. It's awesome. Your color work's sick, dude.
Thanks, man. I love doing
anyone who wants to look at a piece of art and just go like, oh my God, there's a million things in there, and every single one has so much intent. You're gonna get it. Yeah. I know Cal has some lovely images of some of the stuff you've been working on, and we're going to be throwing it up here throughout the episode. All that stuff. But all of your stuff will be linked down below too.
Thanks, Patreon and Etsy shop, great ways. Yeah. My patrons, all the different tiers. There's tiers where you can like meet up with me and monthly, and we can produce whatever you want. There's other tiers where you can get AP each month, and then my Etsy shop. I'm really going full bore with that. So I've got a lot of cool stuff out. And in fact, you're a Nadu gamer. I have I'll send the assets to Ian and Cal so they can put it up. But I made some really cool Nadu triggers. Hopefully that is like, helps the RC decide that Nadu should stick around because it'll organize board states. It looks great. It has a way to track, it's got Nadu triggers, a double-sided token, but it lets you know if it's been triggered once or twice on it. But I put it like once and a second time. It's kind of nice. Yeah. So
we were talking about it a lot pre-show, which is like, and I think they also mentioned on this week's Play to Win episode, which is like this idea that you want to keep track of all of that stuff. And it does really come up. And I think it's so cool that you did that. I was like going deep in the tank about like a playmat with 3 layers of like hasn't been triggered by Nadu, triggered once by Nadu, like just way too deep in the soft throat.
He's over here with like Pepe Sylvia being like, and then the Nadu's over here.
Dude, the Charlie Day at the conspiracy board with me.
Dude, the Crackdown Charlie Day with like the conspiracy like board with all like the dude that meme comes up daily in my home. So.
It's so true. Hell yeah, man. This has been awesome.
Awesome, man. Love you, buddy.
Everyone out there in the audience, if you want suggestions of the deck, questions you have, stuff like that, I will be down in the comments below. Hopefully Tim will be too. I will throw that stuff out there. All of his information, all my information, all that's in the description of this video. This deck is sick. Thanks, also, slight plug here while we're talking about some art merch. I also recently commissioned Sam from the Howling Salt Mine to do
I love
Dino
Sam.
Pilled. I commissioned him to do my Dino Pilled t-shirts, which are on sale on Bonfire, also down in the description below. They're super sick. Mine's on the way in the mail. I didn't wear it for today's episode, but if you've been caught by the Atali bug as much as Tim's been caught by the Nadu bug. Thank you everybody for watching this episode. If you like videos like this, make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button. We've done a ton of stuff over the Patreon, including using some of that money to hire the aforementioned artists that we had. So a lot of cool stuff's happening. A lot of cool stuff is still on the way. I'm really resolved to not stopping to try and push for this channel as much as possible. Amen. So if y'all are interested in any of that stuff, please feel free to let me know. Thank you, Tim, so much for being here for this episode. It's an honor not only to have you on once, but twice.
Yeah, dude, love it.